Welcome to the Road to the Ryder Cup, hosted by Dr. Jeff Poplarski and my dad, PGA golf professional Frank Darby. Let's go USA.
Hello and welcome to the Road to the Ryder Cup. My name is Frank Darby and my co-host is Dr. Jeff Paplowski. He's not sitting right next to me, but it's amazing what technology does these days. And we're 161 days till the golf ball is in the air for the Ryder Cup. So I know, I think with the Masters just ending, everyone's ready for, of course, the PGA and the next two majors after that. But the Ryder Cup is going to be pretty much the biggest event ever here in New York. But let me pass this over to my co-host, Dr. Jeff Paplowski.
Yeah, the anticipation, Frank, is just off the charts. As you know, I'm up at Bethpage a lot. I'm on the ground. And every time I go there, I'm like, what's the next thing I'm going to see here? Another road being built, a tent going up, putting new floors in, painting. It's amazing what's going on there. So every day it gets more interesting as we're leading up to the Ryder Cup. But we did have a couple of really awesome meetings. As you know, I'm chairing the Walking Marshals, and we had a meeting this week. In the Ryder Cup has an office in Farmingdale, off-site, off the course. Just some thoughts on that meeting. They gave us some numbers. There's 4,300 volunteers. 2,700 are from New York. 46 states are represented, and also 28 countries, which is just awesome. And I want to talk to Bryan a little bit about that for sure, being the on-site director, who is our guest, Bryan Karns. We'll do an introduction with him in a second. And then opening day, Frank, was on April 12th, a 40-degree day, raining. And I knew something was going down because I do that golf performance class at 7 in the morning on Saturdays. I saw the cameras. Then I saw the Ryder Cup trophy come out. I said, something's going down. Walked outside, and it was the first tee shot of the season. So a couple of cameras out there, and that's leading to the excitement also.
Yeah, no, hey, listen, I saw it up on social media about that, and seeing an awful lot of pictures of the Ryder Cup itself, which is kind of cool. I think that gets the people going as well. So, hey, listen, it's all about it's all about the Ryder Cup right now.
Yeah, sure. And our guest, I mean, I'm so super pumped. This was a hard guest to get. He's extremely busy. I did stay on top of him with several emails. When are you going to come on? And he was very, very grateful. And what I'm talking about is Bryan Karns. Bryan is the championship director for the 2025 Ryder Cup, obviously at Bethpage Black. His responsibilities for this Ryder Cup are revenue generation, community outreach, government relations, and on-site operations. He's had an 18-year career with the PGA of America, including being championship director at 4 senior KitchenAid championships and 2 PGA championships. And his work, there's a legacy of his work at some of the most iconic golf courses in the United States of America, including Southern Hills, Oak Hill, Medina, and also Valhalla. So, Bryan, just thank you so much. Maybe some opening comments from you about where we are 161 days out from the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, this is obviously a fun part of my job is to be able to go and talk about the Ryder Cup, because everything you laid out, it's sort of the day-to-day, but there's nothing I think that gets me more fired up than talking about what this event kind of represents and what it means. And, the reality is what we're going through right now is kind of the final phase of essentially a 12-year planning process. I mean, when we announced this deal back in 2013 that we were going to come to Bethpage to do the 2019 PGA Championship and the 2024 Ryder Cup, that obviously because of COVID got bumped to 2025. We had circled this one as potentially the opportunity where the Ryder Cup just kind of goes into the stratosphere of it's really kind of been on this incredible trajectory for the last 20 years. But to have the opportunity to do it, in the New York City market at a place like Bethpage is probably the ultimate combination. And then I think as things have continued to come together, it just feels like it's absolute peak. And I think between everything we're doing at the golf course and the city, and then the man in charge, who I know you guys know so well, Keegan Bradley, it feels very serendipitous, and now all we need is that USAW at the end of the week, and I think we've we've had ourselves a great Ryder Cup.
Hey Brian, let me ask you here: is your playbook kind of similar to the other major championships? And I know you did like a couple of the PGAs, or is this a whole different game?
It's a whole different game because, as you guys know, just the experience of coming to a Ryder Cup, what you see. I think you imagine a PGA Championship, and we've obviously got a great one dialed up in a couple weeks down at Quail Hollow, and they've again seen tremendous support from a really great community there in Charlotte and a club in Quail Hollow. But it's different when you think about, again, it's very much it's a major championship. It's 156 the best golfers. Even when you're thinking about spectators coming out, you're seeing guys all day Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's very much just about the golf. Where I think the Ryder Cup, it's on the other end of that spectrum where you've only got 24 guys, and there's less golf to see, but there's more of an atmosphere. There's more of I think, a novelty to it. So there's been a lot of special events that we've done. I mean, even just the demand alone. I think, obviously, Dr. Jeff is familiar with the fact that, of those 4,300 volunteers, we didn't have a problem recruiting them because we had over 30,000 people on a waiting list trying to volunteer. So this event has had kind of every expectation we have for anything else we do at the PGA of America in a 4-year cycle. The demand, the excitement, the enthusiasm for this event just kind of is on a whole nother level. One of the things I was concerned about a couple years ago coming into New York was, this is New York City. It's one thing to run a Ryder Cup in Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I started, right? Like that's a good mid-sized market. But when the Ryder Cup came to town, that was the biggest event by far. New York City is still New York. And so I think what this has done, I think the positive response that we've seen from golfers, from non-golfers, just people who have a sense that this is going to be the biggest event potentially in the city this year. It's pretty exciting for us.
Yeah, Brian, I have one of those scorecards, the Ryder Cup scorecards that says 2024 on it. I remember they showed up in the pro shop, and I'm like, you know what? I think these might be a collector's item. So I took a few home with me, pushing it back the year. But one of the questions I have here, because the international flavor here is just incredible. I know the Super Bowl gives out about 5,000 media credentials for the Super Bowl. What does the Ryder Cup give out as far as numbers for media credentials?
It's probably closer to 400 or 500 that we actually give out credential wise. I think it's a different deal because you've got an entire week of accreditation. So there's probably a little bit more vetting in terms of who's there, and we have limitations in terms of the size of the media center. So the media center that obviously all that global media will come in and work out of is built in a temporary environment. So I think we do have some of those limitations, but I think more than ever, it's pretty clear. I think the golf media that's really covering, we're not just credentialing, hey, you're some blogger from a remote part of the country that wants to just come out to the Ryder Cup. We've got great relationships with the Golf Writers Association, and I think some of what's happening in golf media, it's some of the best content and coverage we've seen, even as it's got a little bit leaner. There's still some incredible reporting going on. Coming off of the Masters last week, it just feels like, some of, whether it was, again, just the photography, the written word, everything about it, like there's just a lot of good stuff happening. But we do probably have a smaller tent simply because there's just, smaller amount of access that we can provide.
Hey, Jeff, that's a good idea you had bringing Brian on here. Maybe we have a chance to get some media credentials, and maybe he won't vet us too deeply right here.
Exactly. Brian, yeah, good point, Frank. Thanks for bringing that up. Brian, one of the things, being a lifelong New Yorker, Frank and myself, traffic is always a pain in the neck in New York, Long Island. Tell us about some of the things the Ryder Cup is doing, maybe to combat traffic. I know you're getting parking at Jones Beach, and you're going to have several, I believe, a couple of hundred buses that are going back and forth to Jones Beach to the championship. Tell us about traffic, and tell us about that parking arrangements Farmingdale State College also, I think, you're using.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, when we start planning these events, the hardest thing really to figure out is the transportation, because there's no golf course on the planet that's built with the infrastructure and the parking nearby. I mean, you think about downtown arenas or, UBS Arena or MSG, there's no expectation that you need to provide parking or transportation for someone that's going to a Knicks game. And so, oftentimes that's one of the big things we do is we go, okay, how are people going to get on the golf course? Because that Bethpage parking lot, there's, 600 spots, and those are all going to players, and we're actually building team rooms in there. So Jones Beach, and I guess our overall strategy is to try to identify, how are people getting to events, market to market, what are the efficient modes of transportation? And so, what we really benefit from here is we've got Jones Beach, which is managed by New York State. And so as a part of our host site agreement, we were able to access those lots. And so people can park there. That they do have to pay for that. There's a parking pass that they can buy online in advance, and then they would park there, and then obviously have a shuttle from Jones Beach. We've got shuttles running from the Farmingdale train stop. So anyone running, that's comfortable, that's living in the city, or just anywhere along the Long Island Railroad line can jump on the train. But then we've also got rideshare. That's obviously been something that, as we've looked to alleviate some of the busing concerns and really meet people where they are, which so many people just want to jump in an Uber at their home. They don't want to they just want to go, look, if I'm 10 minutes from the golf course, put me in an Uber. But so much of, I think, from a traffic standpoint, we work with New York State Police. That's a huge lift. We've got, a handful of guys on our team. Dr. Jeff, you probably got to know Evan Crowder and Alex Boachman, who really just work, day in, day out with New York State Police, with transportation vendors. It's a whole process. So I think at the end of the day, we know, it's going to take a little bit. It's not, it's quite as seamless as maybe some events, but we've got a really good plan in place that we're going to have more information on later this summer. But it's all a collaboration with all the stakeholders. So we don't do anything without talking to, again, New York State Police, Nassau County, Suffolk County. We go, how can we make this, I think, the most efficient way to get to the event? And the other thing that we've had to educate everyone on is arrival times at the Ryder Cup. I think, we were talking, for example, with Long Island Railroad, they can look back at numbers for events at Bethpage in the past, or Shinnecock, and go, yeah, well, this is kind of the train schedule. I think you all know the biggest difference is that, Friday morning at the PGA Championship, there were probably 5,000 people on site tops. For the Ryder Cup, there's going to be 30,000 people on site at 7 a.m, because that first tee on Friday morning is what people want to be to. So all that is what we've thought through. And so at the end of the day, so much of my job is what that experience is like, because if you're coming to the event, you've bought, like you said, you bought your ticket that obviously was priced higher than we've ever had. Part of that experience is it's seamless. You go park, you get on the shuttle, because that's when your journey with the Ryder Cup begins. And so I think even, what's it like pulling into Jones Beach? What are people going to see? How long are they going to wait? Because that's going to be a first part of their experience.
Sure.
Brian, I think that Long Island Railroad scenario is going to be a home run, especially for the city people. And, I'm sure everything on Long Island has been taken for years now, probably since they made the announcement in 2013. But so with the ending of the Masters this past week, and it's always such a great event, and I'm sure you've been down there and you know what these major events are like. Is there anything you take from what happened at the Masters, or some of the things that they're doing? The one thing that I personally love, which is probably never going to happen, is I just like the idea of no cell phones. And I think it just makes the fans, it keeps them a little bit calmer, I think, too. And it's a different kind of fan down there at the Masters as well. And I also like the way they're all dressed. They look like golfers, every one of them. They're out there and they're really enjoying the whole day. So what have you taken from the Masters in Augusta?
I think in the almost 2 decades with the PGA, I think the Masters is got some unique things. Whether it's year over year at the same event, it's a brand. They're they're kind of in a lane of their own, I think. And so there's a lot of things that you do look at and you go, hey, we'd love to do X, Y, Z, but then you realize that there are some efficiencies that they have. I mean, the ability to park people on site and year over year invest in a property with capital programs that allow you to do that. Whereas we're, again, moving from location to location. And so some of the efficiencies, aren't there, but I'd be lying if I said we weren't always looking. There's every little bit, everything you see on the broadcast, and as much as 99% of people are looking at what's going on inside the ropes, I'm loving the little videos, or I'm loving when the camera pans to the concession stand and what's the line like, and how quickly are people moving through, and hearing stories about the at-home azalea kits they're selling, because that's what we're trying to do is not replicate the Masters, but it's all best case. What can we take and what can we pull from to try to be additive?
Brian, it's funny this year it seemed like the biggest seller. I mean, the numbers that they're talking about in the shop. I mean, somewhere between 80 and $100 million they sold. Is the Ryder Cup going to have a gnome type character?
Well, that's again, those are really great examples, Frank, of stuff that you go, how did a gnome become such a big thing, right? Like how did that sort of item, and those are the things that kind of, as event producers and people who run events, that yeah, you want to have great golf and you want to have compelling entertainment, at the same time. You want to have these cool things that the people know you for outside of it, that attract, maybe the non-golfer to go, well, I don't know much about the mat, but I love their gnomes. And so we do think about that a lot. I think, what happened at the Masters this year, that's what I tell people in the industry, like, that's the stuff we don't control. And you kind of fingers crossed that you have a moment like that, which is, I think, collectively all of the golf world holding their breath for almost 3 hours, thinking, golly, this is Rory's time, surely. And that wild roller coaster is the kind of television that I think you couldn't draw up if you wanted. I mean, if you did your best to say, how could we script this out? I'm not sure it could have gone any better. But I think what's great for the Ryder Cup is that, everyone at home, as they're watching Bryson and Rory down the stretch, or Justin Rose, or even a Patrick Reed kind of, sort of surge out of nowhere, is there's a lot of Ryder Cup implications. And that's a really neat thing about being in a Ryder Cup year, is whether it's the majors, where all of the points that the guys can earn are exponentially higher. But even event to event, I mean, the RBC Heritage this week, they're going to be talking about who, is there an American golfer that's surging that's going to maybe win and put themselves in a better position. And so I love the fact that the majors, not only are the majors this year, but they're also essentially the one-way ticket to making the Ryder Cup team. I think based on points, if you're, in the top 20 of the current Ryder Cup standings and you win one of the last 3 majors, you're essentially on the team. And so I think it all sort of is exciting, because anything that's happening positive in professional golf, I think in the year of a Ryder Cup, it all feels like it's building towards that culmination, which is guys making the Ryder Cup team. And so it's just really compelling. And I think it just generates that much more interest in an event that probably needs no more interest.
Yeah, Brian, a couple of things about, I know the tickets, I believe, are sold out. And I know you're using your secondary market, SeatGeek. So people could still go on SeatGeek, but it's a little bit more than the face value of the ticket, right?
Correct.
Is all the corporate opportunities taken, or is there still availability for purchasing tents, rooms? Is that available?
It's essentially over. The demand was just beyond, I think, even what we would expect in New York. But as you can imagine, there's so many of these companies that nationally might say, when we're in, Milwaukee at Whistling Straits or Minneapolis, that they don't have, as big of a book of business there. So they, get a 10-person package. In New York, everyone has, been, let's get the 50-person or the 100, because they do so much business in the city. And so that's been an incredible, I think, indicator of the strength of the Ryder Cup brand from a corporate standpoint, is how strong that's gone. So we've got a few things kind of here and there, one-offs, but we actually got to a point where historically we would have said, well, should we just, because when you build, all of these corporate structures in a temporary environment, in theory, you could say, we're going to build a 10 across the street and we can continue to do that. But we've got a level of expectation for what we want people to be able to experience. And we legitimately got to a point where we said, there's just no more room to build anything. And we also want to ensure that the clients we have on board get the best possible experience. And so a lot of what we think about right now is, how do we execute, the most incredible week? Because for a lot of people, for a lot of companies, I mean, this is a really big endeavor, and there's a lot that, really, I think they're putting into coming out, entertaining clients that week. And so we want to deliver the best experience possible.
Brian, a couple of things. I actually have a couple of little things. How many people are going to be able to sit around that first tee on the mornings?
We don't, obviously we have, a number for the grandstand, but what is so great about Bethpage is that, again, when I said 25,000 earlier, I think that's going to be the number of people that are in and around, because you're going to have the initial rush at 6 a.m. when the gates open for everyone to get into the grandstands, but then they start filling, that whole first tee, all to the right, all in the middle, and the fact that Bethpage is maybe the best Ryder Cup setup, and that you've got one tee, you've got the first hole, and then you've got 15 through 18 all on that side around Swamp Road. And obviously what that does is everybody wants to be at the first tee, and then you want to be 15, 16, 17, 18 as the matches are coming to a close. I think that, aspirationally, there's 25, 30,000 people sort of in that kind of bubble, creating the energy, and that's probably one of the biggest differences that we have from a PGA Championship to a Ryder Cup is just that focus on. There's like a 2-hour window between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. on Friday morning. That is maybe the most compelling piece of golf access that's going to happen, because people, what exists on the first tee at the Ryder Cup is maybe the most special kind of atmosphere that there is in golf. And so to be able to deliver that in a significant way is probably the top of our priority list.
So the only concern that I would have, and again, I ran the New York State Open there for 25 years and grew up at Bethpage Black, and I didn't have any kind of logistic issues that you guys are going to have. But if I'm on the first hole or in the middle of the first fairway, how am I going to get to 2, 3, or 4? Is that going to be tricky, or are we going to be routing them down some of those back paths? I mean, that's going to be a hard area to get people flowing through.
Yeah, I think, that's where Kerry Haig, who is our chief championships officer, who I'm sure you both are familiar with, has done, golf course setup, is arguably one of the best, and if not the best in the business at doing it. He's the expert that comes in. He was actually here this week, going through with NBC, looking at TV towers, but he has this incredible knack for understanding spectator flow. And again, spectator flow at a Ryder Cup is so different than spectator flow at a PGA Championship, because it's almost like that locust kind of, mentality where they just go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And by the time, the Friday morning, the last group goes through, the third or fourth hole, people aren't, everyone's gone because there's not golf again for 4 or 5 hours. And so there is a lot of thought put into that, to the extent that we have in the past even rerouted at Hazeltine in 2016. We had a slightly different routing of the actual golf holes to make sure that fans could get from point A to point B. So I think, again, at the end of the day, there's going to be stretches the Ryder Cup where it's going to feel tight, and there's going to be a lot of fans, and that's, I think, part of what it is to come out to the Ryder Cup. But I think the reality is the best in the business are considering how to make that as simple as possible.
Yeah, Brian, they're saying that this is going to be the ultimate home field advantage. I was just curious, do you have any interaction with the European team at all?
Yeah, so very much so. So, when the Ryder Cups happen, when it's a domestic Ryder Cup, the PGA of America, handles all of the operations. We're fully in everything from, where the portos go to the team. We're all in that. When it's an away year, we really focus more on the team. And so obviously our counterparts at Ryder Cup Europe handle sort of all the operational pieces. So we do, engage with them regularly, a lot of it on special events, team related things. But to your point, I think anytime you're the home team, you have the opportunity to leverage that. And to I think there's no question that it matters in a way that is almost impossible to sort of quantify or really articulate. But it matters when it says everything that, in a way, Ryder Cup win is maybe one of the most difficult things to get these days. And we haven't done it in 30 years. It's still like, as a, sort of objectively as a golf fan, it's hard to believe that it's been 30 years since the United States Ryder Cup team has won on foreign soil. But I think it just means that those home course advantages are real, and I think this one maybe is going to be as real as it'll ever get.
Greg, one other question I had from which I thought was pretty impressive. So we heard about these Ryder Cup shops. How many shops are there going to be? That's at the main admission gate, correct? When they drop off from
Correct.
Jones Beach, the buses. So shops is obviously it's more than one facility, right?
Right. So this will kind of give you some context. So we've got, traditionally, and at Whistling Straits, there's, roughly 60,000 square foot merchandise tent. So I'm sure you guys have seen these before at the PGAs and others, where you walk in, it feels like it's a department store on steroids. And somehow it's just all Ryder Cup gear. And so we will have one there. What's we've seen with this event is the need to continue to add this. So probably, there might be another one or two locations on site, one for sure that will have kind of a secondary shop. But what's been the biggest difference here is that we're going to have a fan activation in New York City during the week of the Ryder Cup, where we're going to have shops. We're going to have sort of pop-up shops all over New York City throughout the course of the week. We've got the pre-sale that's happening, and it just, I think, speaks to the demand for Ryder Cup merchandise. People just love it. And that is probably something that I think we are in line with the Masters, and that when you walk in and you see people in these merchandise shops, they're grabbing whatever they can because the logo means so much. I think, people in this area, one of the coolest things is you walk around and you see logos from past events, people walking down the street in Manhattan, and they've got a, PGA Championship logo from 2019 or an Oak Hill logo from 2023. It's just, I think the ultimate, sort of collectible piece, and people just love golf gear because, more than ever, you can wear it to work. You can wear it, sort of to anything. And the merchandise has become a massive, massive program. I laugh at old photos where, the 1980s, 1990s, we were doing merchandise shops, like literally under open air tents, like, just 6 foot tables. And they were just, just putting out t-shirts, and now we've got these elaborate shops to really, at the end of the day, just enhance the customer experience. And when you walk into that Ryder Cup merchandise experience, you're going to feel like, look, this is not only, the greatest selection, but it's also one of the coolest ways to experience and see all the different brands and how they can represent the Ryder Cup.
Brian, I think it's going to be really interesting. I mean, as enormous as this undertaking is at Bethpage, I can just imagine what New York City is going to do, because, it's going to be a week of parties and information and, interaction between all the internationals that are going to be here. Because, the internationals are not staying on Long Island. They're staying right in the heart of New York City. So just think about, hey, it might be time to invest in an English-Irish pub over there, because they're going to be hitting every single place there. So like you're saying, with all these pop-up stuff, and it's going to be just exhilarating that whole week.
Yeah, and that's again, I think the accessibility of New York for European golf fans was probably why their side of the pond had circled this one as well. And so from the beginning, knowing the demand for volunteers and tickets and everything else was so strong that we could put a little bit of our focus on what to do in the city, that's how we've landed in spots where there are a couple of Irish pubs that are going to have official watch parties. And so, we think about this as much from what's happening in 25, but also for the long-term brand. The 27 Ryder Cup is in Ireland at Adair Manor. So a lot of what, we've tried to incorporate is, okay, how can we do something that the Irish, because the Irish government is getting involved, right? And it's like, how can we help promote what's going on over there? And then you've also got the 29 Ryder Cup going back to Hazeltine in Minneapolis. And so in a perfect world, the Ryder Cup has turned into something that, every market we're in is planning ahead, and that it's as much about 2 years and 4 years and 6 years as it is the one that's right in front of us. So it's, I think, all part of the process of making this the best and biggest thing. And again, I can't stress how, going back to last summer when, we were, probably longer in the process of selecting a captain, and then to ultimately end up where we did. I kind of pinch myself sometimes because it just feels like, the stuff has just worked out. It's just continued to kind of come up, just positive after positive. And I think that's all just a really, really good omen for what we're going to see in September.
We're just going to go to commercial break. We're going to hear a word from Tunnel to Towers. By the way, the Tunnel to Towers is the National Golf Series. They have over 150 golf outings across the country to help our American heroes. We do have a national campaign. T2T.org is the website. The number 2T.org. They have a national campaign where you can donate $11 a month for our nation's heroes. So let's hear from them. We are with Bryan Karns, Championship Director at the 2025 Ryder Cup, and we'll be right back.
Okay, welcome back to the Road to the Ryder Cup with Frank Darby and Dr. Jeff Paplowski. And hey, listen, we've gotten so much information from Bryan Karns right here. I wish I had another 2 or 3 hours to keep him on.
Bryan, one of the questions I have for you as we're closing here, September 29th, 2025, the Ryder Cup will be over. The legacy hopefully is going to be very positive in New York. Where do you go from there? Do you have another Ryder Cup you're going to be directing?
No, this will likely be the one that I do. So there's another one of my peers and another incredible individual that's already kind of planning. It's a guy that his name's Ryan Ogle. He's running the PGA Championship next year at Aronimink in Philly, and then we'll transition up there. And I think it's one of the cool things. So there's 4 different spectator events we have at the PGA of America. The Ryder Cup, obviously being sort of the most visible, but only every 4 years. And so we've got a group of championship directors that run the PGA Championship, the Senior PGA, and the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. And it's probably the biggest privilege we have is that event, is to be able to work that event. And so it's an interesting spot because I will likely have be able to move on and segue. We've got PGA Championships in San Francisco in 28. Baltusrol in 29, which could very much be a fit. The cycle that I kind of live my life by is that 2 to 3 year. So I go, okay, well, I'm done with 25. So what's happening in 28 and 29? But golf's in such an interesting space right now. I think just in what could be the future of it. So as great as it's been being with the PGA, I'm really, I think, excited about where golf's going and what opportunities that presents. But it's hard to think about it. But even anything other than just being able to sleep in and have a sense of relief that it's all over. But it also comes with that you just know there's the bittersweet hangover of something you've spent 3 years pouring yourself into is actually over. But I think more than anything, what I think about is September 26 Friday morning, what it's going to feel like to be on that first tee, seeing 25,000 people chanting USA, USA, seeing, Keegan lead the 12 USA guys out, and hopefully on the evening of the 28th, we're celebrating the USA win.
Sure. Brian, as you know, the Tunnel to Towers is one of our sponsor. We're going to send you these lovely pair of leather wrapped whiskey glasses. Hopefully, I'll see you maybe at Bethpage, or maybe I'll send it to your office there in New York City, and maybe you could have a drink September 29th with those glasses when it's all over. Bob's, anything else?
No, hey, listen, Brian, it was great. And you know what? You seem like you can really handle this because you're nice and calm right now. And we'll look forward to talking to you as we get a little bit closer. We're not even going to attempt to talk to you, for at least 2 or 3 weeks before it as well. But hey, listen, you seem super organized, and it was fun having you on and a lot of great information.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate everything you do. And I think, when this all comes to fruition, I hope you guys enjoys this as much as I'm going to, because it's all a team effort. A lot of people that go into making this happen, and even just the little things that can pop up around it. I mean, it helps with everything we're trying to do. So I appreciate you guys, and anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out and ask.
Hey, thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Enjoy the day.
All right. Thanks, guys.